Isabella didn't remember falling to her knees. One second, her mother was standing beside her on the apartment walkway, complaining about the heat and whether they'd left the stove on. The next, Pamela Sharp's entire body went rigid, like someone had flipped a switch inside her and shut everything down at once. The sound her mother made wasn't a scream. It was worse. A choking, guttural rasp that seemed to claw its way out of her throat, raw and animal. Isabella's brain couldn't process it fast enough. Her hands reached out instinctively, grabbing at her mother's arm as Pamela's knees buckled and she crumpled hard onto the pavement. "Mom!" Isabella's voice cracked, small and pathetic even to her own ears. "Mom, what is it?" Pamela's eyes rolled back, showing only the whites. Her arms began to jerk violently, fingers curling inward like claws, her whole body convulsing against the concrete in sharp, unnatural rhythms. Isabella had seen seizures in movies, but this was nothing like that. This was her mother's body betraying her, writhing and twisting as if trying to escape itself. Isabella looked around wildly. The apartment complex stretched out around them, windows glowing with the dim light of evening TV shows and dinner routines. Doors stayed closed. No one stepped out. No one shouted down to ask if everything was okay. The world just kept moving, indifferent, while her mother shook on the ground like a broken thing. Her hands were trembling so badly she nearly dropped her phone. She fumbled it open, vision blurring as panic squeezed her chest. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Her fingers moved on autopilot, typing words that barely made sense. "Mom's having a seizure. Please help." She hit send before she even realized what she'd done. For a moment, she stared at the screen, waiting for the reply that would fix everything. Waiting for someone to tell her what to do, how to stop this, how to make her mother's body remember how to be still again. Then her stomach dropped. The name at the top of the conversation thread stared back at her, cold and unfamiliar. Not 911, not her aunt, not anyone who could help. This is the wrong contact. Her throat closed. She wanted to scream, to throw the phone, to rewind the last 10 seconds and do it right this time. But Pamela's body kept seizing, her breath coming in harsh, uneven gasps, and Isabella could do nothing but kneel there, frozen in her own helplessness. Her phone buzzed. She looked down, heart hammering. "Please, who is this?" Then a second later, "It's a wrong number. If you're watching this right now, you're already closer than anyone else. Don't look away yet." She hasn't been helped. Isabella's hands were shaking so hard she could barely grip the phone. She looked up again, desperate, scanning every door, every window, every shadow in the parking lot. Someone had to see this. Someone had to care. But the apartment complex stayed silent. A television flickered behind one curtain. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Life continued everywhere except right here, where her mother was dying on the pavement and no one was coming. Pamela's convulsions grew harsher. Her head knocked against the concrete, and Isabella lunged forward, trying to cushion it with her hands. Her mother's skin felt cold and clammy, her breath coming in short, rattling bursts that sounded like drowning. Isabella had no idea if she was supposed to hold her down or let her move. She'd heard something once about not restraining someone during a seizure, but what if her mother hurt herself? What if she stopped breathing? The seconds stretched into something unbearable. Time wasn't moving normally anymore. Each moment felt thick and sluggish, like trying to run through water while everything around her blurred into panic. Her phone buzzed again. This is a wrong number. 2 words, but cold, final and dismissive. Isabella stared at the screen, and something inside her chest cracked open. She'd sent the message to a stranger. Some random person who didn't know her, didn't care, and had no reason to help. Her one lifeline had been a mistake, and now her mother was seizing on the ground while precious seconds bled away. Her vision swam. She wanted to scream at herself for being so stupid, so careless, so useless in the one moment that mattered most. Why hadn't she just dialed 911? Why had she panicked and grabbed the first contact her thumb landed on? Pamela's body jerked harder, her limbs flailing against the concrete. A thin line of blood appeared near her temple where her head had struck the ground. Isabella pressed her palm against it, feeling the warmth seep through her fingers, and the reality of it hit her like a fist to the stomach. Her mother could die here. Right now. In this empty walkway where no one was watching and no one was coming. And it would be because Isabella had made one mistake in the worst possible moment. She looked down at her phone, tears blurring the screen, and typed again with trembling fingers. She didn't care if it was the wrong number. She didn't care if the person on the other end thought she was crazy. She just needed someone to answer. What would you do if help didn't come? If you're watching this, leave a comment, because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew about strangers. Isabella had never been good at asking for help. That wasn't something Pamela Sharp had taught her. Growing up, it had always been just the two of them against the world, and the world didn't care if you were tired or scared or drowning in bills you couldn't pay. You pushed through. You survived. You didn't complain. She remembered being 10 years old, watching her mother come home from a double shift at the diner, shoulders sagging, eyes ringed with exhaustion. Pamela would smile anyway, ruffling Isabella's hair and asking about homework like she hadn't just spent 14 hours on her feet. There were nights Isabella woke to the sound of her mother crying in the bathroom, muffling the sobs with a towel so her daughter wouldn't hear. Pamela never went to the doctor. Not when she twisted her ankle and limped for 3 weeks. Not when the migraines started coming more frequently, leaving her pale and nauseous in the dark. She'd wave off Isabella's concern with the same line every time. We don't have money to waste on feeling bad. Most people don't ignore warning signs because they don't care. They ignore them because they're trying to survive. If that sounds familiar, you already understand this story. Isabella had learned to watch for the signs. The way her mother's hands would tremble when she thought no one was looking. The pills she kept in her purse, rationed out carefully because refills cost too much. The dizzy spells Pamela blamed on skipping lunch even though Isabella knew she'd seen her eat. Just tired, Pamela would say, and Isabella would pretend to believe her. But you can't outrun your body forever. Isabella had known that, somewhere deep down. She'd felt it in the pit of her stomach every time her mother brushed off another symptom, another warning sign. She just hadn't expected it to happen like this, violent and sudden and terrifying, on a random evening when they were just walking home. Pamela's seizure showed no signs of stopping. Her breathing had turned shallow and ragged, each inhale sounding like a struggle. Blood smeared across Isabella's palm from the cut on her mother's temple, and the sight of it sent a fresh wave of panic crashing through her chest. She couldn't lose her. Not like this. Not when they'd fought so hard to keep going, to stay afloat, to make it through one more month, one more bill, one more impossible day. Her fingers moved across the screen, typing through tears, through fear, through the crushing weight of knowing she'd already failed once. Please, my mom has collapsed, she's having a seizure. We're at Westbridge Apartments walkway near the garden. I don't know what to do. Please. She hit send and closed her eyes, praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in that someone, anyone, would care enough to answer. Her phone buzzed. The reply came almost instantly. Who is this, please? Wrong number. Isabella's breath hitched. The words sat there on the screen, blunt and final, like a door slamming shut in her face. She'd known it was a mistake the second she'd sent the first message, but seeing it confirmed, seeing someone dismiss her crisis with 2 careless words, made her feel small and stupid and utterly alone. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, typing faster than her brain could keep up. I'm so sorry. I know this is the wrong number. I meant to call 911 but I messed up. My mom is dying. Please, I don't know what to do. She hit send and immediately felt ridiculous. What was she expecting? That some random stranger would drop everything and save them? that they'd magically know what to do or where to find them. She was begging someone who had no reason to care, no obligation to help, and probably thought she was insane. But she couldn't stop. Her desperation had nowhere else to go. Please don't ignore this. She's having a seizure and I can't make it stop. Pamela's body had begun to slow, but not in a way that brought relief. The violent convulsions were easing into something worse, a limpness that made Isabella's stomach turn. Her mother's eyes were still rolled back, her lips tinged with blue, and her breathing had changed. It wasn't the harsh, gasping rhythm from before. It was shallow now, faint, like her body was forgetting how to pull air into her lungs. "Mom, please," Isabella whispered, leaning close to her mother's face. "Please don't leave me." She pressed her ear to Pamela's chest, trying to hear a heartbeat beneath the fabric of her shirt. It was there, but weak. Too weak. She'd read somewhere that seizures could cause brain damage if they lasted too long. How long had it been? 2 minutes? What? It felt like hours. What if help didn't come in time? What if her mother's brain was already damaged beyond repair? What if Isabella had to live the rest of her life knowing she'd failed in the one moment that mattered most, not because she didn't try, but because she'd been too panicked to dial 3 simple numbers correctly? Her vision blurred with tears. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. She wanted to rewind time and do everything differently. Her phone buzzed again. She looked down, expecting another dismissal. Another cold rejection. Another confirmation that she was on her own. But the message that appeared wasn't what she expected. "Stay calm, okay?" 2 words. No question mark. No sympathy. Just a command, delivered with the kind of certainty that cut through the chaos like a blade. Then another message appeared immediately after. "I'm coming, do not move her, tell me if her breathing changes." Isabella stared at the screen, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Her hands were still shaking, but something about those words, about the tone, the authority, the absolute lack of hesitation, made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. Would you trust a stranger in your darkest moment? Comment below if you're still holding your breath, because what happens next will redefine everything you thought about wrong numbers. Isabella's fingers trembled as she typed back. "For you." The reply was immediate. "That doesn't matter right now. I have your location. Help is already moving. Focus on your mother." She stared at the words, her mind struggling to catch up. He had her location, she hadn't sent an address in that first panicked message. But there wasn't time to question it. Another message appeared before she could respond. "Is she still breathing still?" Isabella leaned over her mother, placing a shaking hand near Pamela's mouth. The faint warmth of breath brushed against her palm, irregular but present. "She is still breathing but barely." "Okay, good. Keep her on her side if possible. Do not restrain her. Shield her head. Count her breaths out loud. It will help you stay focused." Isabella didn't understand why she obeyed. Every instinct screamed that this was insane, taking orders from a stranger who wouldn't even say his name, who somehow knew where she was, who spoke with the kind of authority that felt both comforting and unsettling. But she did it anyway, because the alternative was drowning in her own terror. She gently rolled her mother onto her side, cradling Pamela's head in her lap. Her mother's face was slack, lips parted, a thin trail of saliva at the corner of her mouth. Isabella wiped it away with her sleeve and began counting. 1, 2, 3. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. 4, 5, 6. The breathing was uneven, but it was there. That had to mean something. It had to. She glanced around again, expecting to hear sirens by now. The stranger had said help was coming, but the street remained eerily quiet. No flashing lights. No urgent voices. Just the hum of distant traffic and the occasional bark of that same dog somewhere in the complex. Her phone buzzed. 2 minutes out. 2 minutes. Isabella's chest tightened. 2 minutes could be a lifetime when someone was dying. But at least it was something. At least someone was coming. Then she heard them. Footsteps. Multiple sets, moving fast but not running. Controlled. Precise. The sound grew louder, echoing off the apartment buildings, and Isabella's head snapped up. She expected paramedics. She expected uniforms and equipment and the organized chaos of an emergency response. What she saw instead made her breath catch. Black vehicles rolled into the parking lot with eerie silence, sleek, unmarked, moving in formation like they'd done this 1,000 times before. They stopped in perfect alignment, engines purring low, and the doors opened in unison. Men stepped out. Not paramedics. Not the police. They wore dark suits, moved with military efficiency, and their faces were unreadable. At the center of them, calm and composed, was a man whose presence commanded the space around him without a single word. He looked directly at Isabella. And somehow she knew. This was the stranger. The man at the center didn't rush. He didn't shout orders or scan the scene with panic. He simply walked forward with the kind of calm that suggested he'd already assessed everything before stepping out of the vehicle. His suit was immaculate, dark and perfectly tailored, and his eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto Pamela's convulsing body with clinical precision. He knelt beside Isabella without a word, already pulling on latex gloves that had appeared from nowhere. A medic materialized at his shoulder, moving in perfect synchronization, carrying equipment that looked far too advanced for a random emergency response. "You did well," the man said quietly, his voice low and steady. "You kept her safe." Isabella's throat tightened. She hadn't done anything. She'd panicked. She'd sent a message to the wrong person. She'd been useless. But before she could respond, he was already moving. His hands checked Pamela's pulse, her airway, the angle of her head. He spoke in short, clipped phrases to the medic beside him, words Isabella didn't fully understand but that sounded like a language of absolute control. The medic administered something, an injection into Pamela's arm, and within seconds, the seizure began to ease. Someone answered when it mattered. Stories like this only stay alive when people carry them forward. Her body stopped jerking. Her breathing, though still shallow, steadied into something more rhythmic. The change was so immediate it felt unnatural, like someone had reached into her mother's body and flipped a switch. Isabella stared, unable to process what she was seeing. Who were these people? How had they known exactly what to do? And why did they have equipment that looked like it belonged in a hospital, not the back of an unmarked car? Real sirens finally cut through the night air. Red and blue lights strobed across the apartment buildings as an ambulance pulled into the complex, followed by a police car. The paramedics jumped out, rushing forward with a stretcher, but the moment they saw the man kneeling beside Pamela, they slowed. One of them hesitated. "Sir, we can take it from here." The man didn't look up. "She's stable. Transport her to Mercy General. I've already contacted Dr. Lim in neurology. He's expecting her." The paramedic blinked, clearly confused, but didn't argue. Something about the man's tone left no room for debate. As they lifted Pamela onto the stretcher, Isabella finally found her voice. "Who are you?" The man stood, pulling off his gloves with methodical care. He looked at her for the first time, really looked at her, and Isabella felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. "My name is Jiho," he said simply. "How did you know where we were?" Isabella's voice cracked. "I didn't send you an address." Jiho tilted his head slightly, the ghost of something unreadable crossing his face. "I know a lot of things, Isabella." Her blood went cold. She hadn't told him her name. He stepped back as the paramedics loaded Pamela into the ambulance, then glanced at one of his men. A silent exchange passed between them, and the man nodded before disappearing into one of the black vehicles. Jiho turned back to Isabella. "You should ride with your mother," he said. "But we'll talk again soon." It wasn't a question. It was a certainty. Ever had someone save your life and terrify you at the same time? Comment below if you trust Jiho or run, because what Isabella discovers next will make that choice impossible. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Isabella sat in a plastic chair outside the ICU, her hands still stained with her mother's blood, her mind replaying the last hour in fractured loops. Pamela was alive. That was all that mattered. But the questions gnawing at Isabella's chest wouldn't stop. A doctor emerged from the double doors, clipboard in hand, exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes. He spotted Isabella and walked over, his expression carefully neutral. "Your mother is stable," he said. "The seizure was caused by a condition called epilepsy secondary to an undiagnosed lesion. It's been building for months, maybe longer. If treatment had been delayed by even a few more minutes, we'd be having a very different conversation right now." Isabella's stomach twisted. A few more minutes. That's how close she'd come to losing her. "She's going to be okay?" Isabella's voice sounded small, childlike. "She'll need monitoring, medication, and follow-up care. But yes, she's going to be okay." The doctor paused, then added, "You did the right thing getting help when you did." Except she hadn't. She'd texted the wrong number. She'd made a mistake that should have cost her mother's life. But somehow, impossibly, it had saved her instead. The doctor left, and Isabella sat alone in the fluorescent hum of the waiting room. She noticed things she hadn't before. The way nurses whispered when they passed her. The way security glanced at her with something that looked like curiosity or caution. One of the administrators had asked her twice if Mr. Park's people had been in touch, and when Isabella said she didn't know who that was, the woman had simply nodded and walked away. Joe, that's who they meant. But who was he? And why did everyone seem to know his name? Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, heart skipping. "How is your mother?" Isabella stared at the message. She should have been relieved, grateful. But instead, all she felt was unease. "She's alive," Isabella typed back. The reply came quickly. "Okay, good. That was the goal." No explanation. No offer to meet. No answers to the 100 questions racing through her mind. Just a simple acknowledgement, clinical and detached, as if saving someone's life was just another task to check off a list. Isabella typed again, faster this time. "Please, who are you?" "Really?" The 3 dots appeared. Then it disappeared, then it appeared again. Finally, the message came through. Someone who answered when it mattered. "Take care of your mother, Isabella." And then, nothing. No more replies. No more messages. Just silence. Isabella sat there, staring at the screen, feeling the weight of something she couldn't name pressing down on her chest. Jiho had saved her mother's life. But he'd also vanished like smoke, leaving behind only questions and the unsettling certainty that he'd been watching long before she ever sent that text. The bills arrived 3 days later. Isabella sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of envelopes with the hospital logo stamped across the front. Her hands didn't shake this time. They just rested flat against the wood, steady and cold. She already knew what the numbers would say before she opened them. Emergency transport, ICU admission, neurological consult, medications, follow-up appointments, thousands of dollars they didn't have. Pamela was asleep in the next room, her breathing soft and even for the first time in days. The doctors had sent her home with a list of instructions longer than Isabella's arm and a prescription bottle that cost more than their weekly grocery budget. But she was alive. She was home. That was supposed to be enough. Isabella opened the first envelope, then the second, then the third. The numbers climbed higher with each one, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she heard the old version of herself screaming, the girl who would have crumpled under the weight of this, who would have cried and panicked and waited for someone else to fix it. But that girl had died on the apartment walkway. Some people fold under pressure. Others become someone new. If stories about becoming stronger matter to you, you already know why you're here. Isabella stood, walking to the window. The complex looked the same as it always had. Same cracked pavement. Same flickering streetlight. Same neighbors who hadn't bothered to open their doors when her mother was dying 10 feet from their windows. Nothing had changed out there. Everything had changed inside her. She pulled out her phone and opened the Notes app, fingers moving with purpose. Step 1. Call the hospital billing department and ask about payment plans. Step 2. Research assistance programs for uninsured patients. Step 3. Pick up extra shifts at the campus library. Step 4. Sell the old laptop she'd been holding onto for no good reason. Step 5. Make a list of everything non-essential and cut it. It wasn't panic. It wasn't hope either. It was something colder and sharper. Calculation. Survival. The same energy she'd felt when Ji-ho had told her to stay calm, when his voice had cut through the chaos and forced her to act instead of collapse. She didn't need him now. She didn't need anyone. Pamela stirred in the other room, murmuring something soft and incoherent. Isabella walked over, standing in the doorway, watching her mother's chest rise and fall. There was a bandage on her temple where her head had hit the pavement. A bracelet from the hospital still circled her wrist. But she was here. She was breathing. Isabella had kept her alive long enough for help to arrive. And now she'd keep them both afloat long enough to survive what came next. She wasn't the girl who'd fallen to her knees anymore. She wasn't the girl who'd sent a text to the wrong number out of desperation and blind fear. She was the girl who'd learned that panic doesn't save lives. Action does. And she was just getting started. 3 months passed in a blur of routine and rebuilding. Pamela returned to work part-time, moving slower now, more careful. She took her medication without complaint, attended every follow-up appointment, and stopped pretending she was invincible. Isabella watched her mother learn to ask for help, and it felt like witnessing something sacred, a quiet surrender that didn't mean weakness, just wisdom. They didn't talk about that night often. When they did, Pamela would reach across the table and squeeze Isabella's hand, her eyes wet with something between gratitude and grief. "You saved my life," she'd say, and Isabella would shake her head, because it hadn't been her. Not really. It had been a stranger who'd answered a message he had no reason to respond to, who'd mobilized resources she still didn't understand, who'd disappeared as quickly as he'd arrived. Isabella never heard from Ji-ho again. No follow-up texts. No mysterious visits. No explanations. Just silence, as if he'd been a ghost conjured by desperation and dissolved by daylight. She tried searching his name online once, late at night when sleep wouldn't come, but the results were either too common or too vague to mean anything. Whoever he was, he'd made sure to stay hidden. But his lessons hadn't disappeared with him. Isabella carried them now, woven into the fabric of who she'd become. She moved through the world differently, steadier, sharper, less afraid of the weight of responsibility. When her roommate had a panic attack during finals, Isabella didn't freeze. She knelt beside her, counted breaths, spoke in that same calm cadence Ji-ho had used. When Pamela's car broke down and the repair bill felt insurmountable, Isabella didn't collapse into despair. She made a plan, executed it, and kept moving forward. She'd learned that panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. That help could come from the most unexpected places. That strength didn't always look gentle or kind. Sometimes it looked controlled, efficient, unflinching in the face of chaos. And she'd learned that one decision, even a wrong one, could rewrite the ending of a story that was supposed to end in tragedy. Isabella still kept that phone. The messages were still there, preserved like artifacts from another lifetime. She scrolled through them sometimes, reading the exchange that had changed everything. Asterisk stay calm. I'm coming. Asterisk 2 sentences that had pulled her back from the edge and taught her what it meant to survive. She didn't delete them. Not because she was waiting for Ji-ho to reappear, but because she needed the reminder that the world was full of people who wouldn't help and also full of people who would, even when they had no reason to. That fate wasn't just what happened to you, but what you chose to do when everything fell apart. Isabella wasn't waiting to be saved anymore. She'd become the person who answered when someone else needed help. And maybe that was the real gift Jiho had given her, not rescue, but the blueprint for how to be strong when strength was the only option left. She closed the messages and set the phone down, feeling the quiet weight of gratitude settle over her like a blanket. Some wrong numbers change everything. And sometimes, the person you become because of them is exactly who you were always meant to be. What's one moment that changed you forever? Share your story in the comments, because we all have a wrong number that turned into the right choice. And if this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Someone else needs to hear it too.